What's up, everybody? This week I'm joined by the Kid as we sit down and talk about a video game series that solidified a genre. The 1990s series, Doom. That and a whole lot more is to come on this week's episode of the 90s podcast. Welcome to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 90s podcast right here on the Becausemaybepodcast Network. Hope you're doing well today, and we are in our 11th season. I can't believe we've been doing this for as long as we have been. Season 11 is on the way, and I am joined by a brand new voice this season. I'm joined by my son. How you doing, kid?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. There is a reason I picked him for this episode, which I'll get to here in a minute. But before we go ahead and get started, if you like what you hear and you don't necessarily go to this podcast place where you usually listen to, we are available on several different platforms. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, Pandora, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, or Amazon Music. You can find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I will always call it Twitter, but, you know, people say X. I can't say that. But you can check us out. Look up Becausemaybepodcast Network. And, of course, don't forget to check us out at becausemaybepodcast.com as you find our archive of everything that we've ever done, ever. From every episode, from episode 1 to today. I've got to update that website too, thinking about it as I'm recording. It should be updated by the time this episode comes out. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is we're here for season 11 and I'm excited. So let's dive straight in, okay? And first of all, a little introduction. Like I said, it's my son.
Hello, how are you guys?
And I brought him on here today because of his gaming style.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so he doesn't game like most kids his age. Now, he's 17, okay? So I'm still going to be referring to him by euphemisms. I'm not leaking his name out there or anything like that because he's still a kid. Okay? What's the handle?
Sorry.
But he's still a kid. So I figured that we would discuss his, you know, his the games that he likes, and then we'll go in and talk about today's topic, which is Doom, yes. One of the greatest games ever made. But let's talk about your gaming habits for a minute.
Alright.
You play very little modern games, is that correct?
I play some modern games, but mainly just UFC, and that's really about it. I don't play Call of Duty or Fortnite or any of those games. Those just don't appeal to me.
So you like one of the games that you play, for example, is Metroid Prime. You completed that recently. Oh, was that Metroid Dread?
Dread. I've been playing Metroid recently, yeah. Yeah,
so, and not just Metroid Dread, you've been playing Super Metroid for the SNES.
Classic.
Yeah, and you played the original version, which they ported to GameCube.
That one, the NES?
Yeah.
That one, I like Zero Mission better.
Okay, that's cool. Because here's the thing. There's a reason I brought him on, okay? This game came out in 93, and a lot of people played it. But he played the modern Doom Eternal, and the 2016 remake.
Yeah, that one.
So I thought, you know what? He knows more about it than I do. Or knows a little bit more about the universe than I do. So I decided to check into the original universe, and we're just going to go ahead and talk about the games, talk about, you know, how they differ from the modern era and stuff like that.
All right.
But let me ask you a question first before we go ahead and get started.
What's up?
You've played the original series, right? Briefly.
About a few hours of the first one and a few minutes of 2, and that's really about it.
So yeah, your Doom playing is more than I am because I never played the original Doom. I played ports of it for the SNES briefly, and I just didn't get into it, you know, at the time. Now I'd probably like it because my tastes have grown up. You know, I do play a lot of first-person shooter games.
Like Fallout and Starfield?
Yes, Fallout and Starfield. I'm still going through Starfield. I took a break from it because I got to a point where I completed a bunch of missions and I needed a break from it. It's a good game. A lot of people don't like it, but I think it's a really good game. But then again, I have a theory on that.
What's that theory you got there?
Okay. I think the more I've watched walkthroughs and playthroughs of the game, and the more reviews I've seen of the game, it's a generational thing. And I'm not talking about. Okay. I'm not talking about, you know, PS4, PS5 generations. I'm talking about actual real life generations. And I think
the Magnavox generation,
right? I think that the older you are, the more likely you are to like the game, to like Starfield.
Alright, I got you.
Because it's basically, I don't want to say Fallout in space, but there's a lot of, Fallout-y elements to it.
Yeah, there
in
is.
terms of the gameplay, not necessarily, whatever. And I think that the older you are, the more you like it, because it's safe, it's similar, it's it's not as innovative as it maybe should have been, and that's why a lot of people were disappointed with it.
Yeah, I get what you mean. But first-person shooters are just not my cup of tea. There's just so much desaturation. Like, there's a Call of Duty released every year. Fortnite is still a thing. It's just most first-person shooters are either futuristic, past, and it's just they're not my cup of tea, to be honest. But Doom is an exception to the rule.
Yeah, because it's the first real one, I guess you could say. I mean, okay, let me phrase that. Wolfenstein 3D is considered the grandfather of all FPS games, okay?
Yep.
But Doom, they didn't call it a Wolfenstein clone whenever FPS games were made.
Well, that, to be fair, was made by the same guys.
It was made by the same guys, but what I mean is whenever a new FPS game came out in the 90s, it was called a Doom clone.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
So, it goes to show you how influential it was, not just in the video game series, but in terms of, the video game industry in general.
Yeah.
Okay, he's Googling something. While he's Googling something, I'm going to give you some information about background about the games. So they're horror games, and they're first-person shooters. So that, it's a combination of both. Made by ID Software, and published by ID Software, and then the later games were republished by GT Interactive and Bethesda Softworks.
Bethesda.
Yes. They own the rights now to Doom. The Doom games are made by the same people who made Fallout.
Now they're owned by Activision?
No.
Oh, no, they're owned by Xbox.
They're owned by Xbox now. So basically, the next Doom game will be an Xbox exclusive. Woo! Yeah, so that's okay. We're an Xbox family in this house. Mainly because of the limitations that the PS5 has in terms of modding games.
True, and also it's cheaper.
Yeah. Price has a lot to do with everything. I think I've told the story before about how my iPhone was bought for a penny. So, but the platform's
Same
released.
here.
It was originally released on DOS, and then it was ported out to the SNES, the Mac OS, the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation, and N64. That was for Final Doom. They were released in 93, 94, 96, the main games of the series, and sold between 3 and 5 million copies, which is a lot for 1990s gaming.
I mean, most games nowadays don't even make 1 million copies. Well, not even 5 million.
No, and this is the other thing too, okay? The way they released the game, which we'll get into here in a minute, it's real good that they made that amount of copies.
Yeah, that is true.
The critics liked the games and gave them an average of 85 to 90% out of 100 per game, which this is something I need you to help me understand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Video games, if they have a rating of less than 85% or 8 out of 10, they're considered a bad game. Do you have any insight on that? Because I've never understood that.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a reason. I could give it like the Source magazine for like music.
Okay.
For rap songs, they would have a mic system, which is they would give you a certain amount of mics out of 5. And as the great Skittles put it, if it was 3 mics, it was okay, but why would you? There are other albums that you could choose. 4, pretty good, and 4.5, 5 up is considered a masterpiece. So I'm thinking when people see a 7 out of 10, they're like, I mean, it's
all right.
Yeah, it's all right, but like, why would I get this compared to an 8 or 9 out of 10? It's kind of another example is, let's say you're at a grocery store,
okay,
and you see a deal for, I don't know, a variety pack of fruit.
Okay.
Where there are 3 versions. One version has about 10 apples, 10 bananas.
Okay.
Pretty good. If you like apples and bananas, you would go for it. But then there's another one, 15 apples and 15 bananas.
Right. Okay.
So why would you go for the 10 if there are 15 available?
I get that, but I've never understood the idea of 7 out of 10 being bad.
Me neither.
It's better than average.
I mean,
it's very good. It's just not excellent.
It's like opinions, so...
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of opinions went into these games, but a lot of opinions go into video games in particular. And I don't buy into a lot of the video game criticism that a lot of people have, because here's the thing, right? I'm going to go off on a mini rant, and then we'll get back to this.
Gotcha.
But video games these days, most of them are open world, 50 gigabytes to 100 gigabytes... You know, and everybody's expecting perfection when these games come out, which they should be working without any bugs. But at the same time, these games are so huge that they're coming out that you can't eliminate all the bugs until it gets out there. You know?
Yeah.
And I know being a fan of Bethesda's three biggest softwares, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and now Starfield, you know, it's easy for me to say, well, you know, bugs happen. But, I mean, look at the Cyberpunk release from a couple of years ago.
Oh, I remember that.
Cyberpunk, when it was released, was considered one of the worst games of all time. Fallout 76 was considered one of the worst games of all time.
Yeah.
But they got patched, and the bugs were smashed, and the storylines were more clear. And then by the end of it, at least Cyberpunk is considered a fantastic game these days.
I still see some people hating on it.
Well, but they're only hating on it from a reputation of the release.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, okay, let me give you an example of that, right? Going back to sports for a minute. You had...
I like sports.
Well, 10 years ago, Swansea City signed a goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And... was it 10 years? Yeah, it was 10 years ago they signed a goalkeeper. And a lot of the fans were hesitant about this goalkeeper based on a reputation of 5 games he'd had 6 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned out to be one of the best goalkeepers the team ever had.
Wow.
Because he'd improved from those 6 bad games every other time he set foot on the pitch.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's the same thing with Cyberpunk, I guess, is every patch has made it better and better and better and better. Not every game's going to be Elden Ring.
No.
But, you know, it did its job, and it is now considered a great game.
I have another example with like sports, and you may not know a lot of UFC, but for whoever is watching that likes UFC, if people know of Jorge Masvidal, he was considered a good fighter, but not really something magical, like a journeyman. But then in 2019, he fought on a London card against another guy named Darren Till, who was coming off a loss to before he got knocked out by Jake Paul, but he was the welterweight champion Tyron Woodley. He was coming off a loss to Woodley and fought Masvidal, and everybody thought, okay, he's just gonna run through this guy to get a shot at the new champ Usman, who took the belt off of Woodley a few weeks earlier. Now that part's irrelevant, but Masvidal then goes out there and knocks out Till, then fights Ben Askren, who is another fighter, Jake Paul, but this was before all that. Knocked him out in 5 seconds, and then capped it off with fighting and beating up Nate Diaz. Okay. And we all know Nate Diaz was the one that choked out McGregor. Yeah. But basically, it's like, at the time, your reputation could be bad, but it could go better.
Well, that's the thing about reputation. Reputation is something that is fluid. It's not solid.
Nope.
I mean, years ago, you know, people had a good reputation. A certain guy had a good reputation, and he's thrown it all away now for doing absolutely heinous things. And I'm not going to give him any space on this podcast. I'll tell you what he did because it's horrendous. But his life, he destroyed his own life and his own reputation. So reputation is a fluid thing rather than a static thing.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll go back to Doom, because Doom is considered one of the greatest games of the 90s. Okay.
Yes.
And when you look at how it was made, which we're going to go into, it's astounding that it made its way onto the shelves at all. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So what happened was, Wolfenstein 3D and the sequel Spear of Destiny was released by ID Games. And
Yep.
Wolfenstein is considered the grandfather of all first-person shooter games. Okay, that is what it is. It is the granddaddy of them all. Every game can link its way back to that. I mean, you know as well as I do. For example, like Fallout might be a one of the bigger franchises in the world right now, but it didn't start off as an FPS.
Started off as an RPG, like a
turn-based isometric
strategy game.
Game, yeah. It had guns and violence in there, but that wasn't, that was the hinge of it.
Yeah.
But what happened was Doom was conceptualized during that time, and they wanted something based on next-gen technology. So this is coming out in 92. PlayStation's already in the works. N64's in the works. Sega Saturn's in the works, for what it was worth. And new graphics cards were coming out. There was rumors of this Windows 95, being in the works as well. Windows 95. I could do a whole episode on Windows 3.1. I swear. So, what was the game studio to do?
I don't know.
Well, any good game studio worth its salt embraces the new technology.
Yeah.
Now, they started work on a brand new engine combined with the newest technologies that were coming out for PC. Because this whole original game was PC based. It was DOS based.
It was created for the PC.
Yeah. It was created for PC, and if it was going to get ported one day, it was going to get ported one day. So what happened is that John Carmack, who is the head developer of ID Games, ID Software, began work on a new engine that was focusing on the new technologies. So he wanted to tap into what was coming down the pipe from Windows.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say Apple too, because I don't think anybody was playing games on Apple back then.
Definitely not.
But I know
now.
not now. No, now you can't play a single game on Apple. But you could back then, because it was trying to be a competitor in the home video game, not in the video game market, but in the home computer market to a PC.
Yeah.
So he created several experimental engines to enhance the Wolfenstein engine for the upcoming game, Shadowcaster. After the release of Shadowcaster and reluctance to do another Wolfenstein game, ID Software got together and decided, okay, what's next? Because here's what people don't understand. Game studios in the 90s were full of young, hungry young men, okay? And when I say young men, we're talking like early 20s to mid 20s. So, they learned how to do all these codes themselves. They didn't go to college for programming, because programming was a relatively new thing. They basically programmed these things themselves on the technology of the time.
They were basically just like schoolers for nerds.
Not necessarily schoolers for nerds. They were the nerds. See, you got to understand, right? Nerds have only been cool for the last 15 years. It was, I think what started nerdom being cool was the Lord of the Rings films being released.
Oh, gosh.
Back in 2001.
I wasn't even alive back then.
Nope. I didn't even know your mama existed back then. So, you've got Lord of the Rings coming out, and everything nerdy starting to become cool. You've got the Harry Potter series coming out, which was seen at the time as the height of fiction. And so, it all nerdy stuff and wizards and monsters and was starting to become mainstream. Well, these guys, for example, Tom Hall, who was the lead designer, before we talk about the nerdy stuff, they wanted to do another game in the Commander Keen series. Do you ever play Commander Keen?
I don't think I know what that is.
Okay, that's good. I'm not familiar with it either. The company was interested in doing it, but the team was less enthused by the idea. They thought that the 3D engine wouldn't be suitable, and so they started looking for a new game in Wolfenstein's image.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to do another Wolfenstein, but they realized that, oh well, we've got this software. Let's do something similar.
All right, as we all do.
Yeah. So lead artist Adrian Carmack, I'm not sure if they're related, wanted to do a game with a darker style, and John Romero, the designer of Wolfenstein, was not interested in making another cutesy game. So they were all in on another gory, adulty, They wanted to make a game that they would play at their age and their life at time. So John Carmack instead created his own concept game based off of his D&D campaigns, because they used to play Dungeons and Dragons. So, they wanted to use technology to fight demons, so they were combining the Evil Dead 2 movie with the movie Aliens. Now, I know you've seen neither of those movies.
I think I've seen Aliens before. I'm not sure, but
you
definitely
haven't
not
seen Aliens. You'd know if you'd seen Aliens. When we were playing our game the other night, you would have known Sigourney Weaver.
Oh yeah.
So I'd know if you'd have seen Aliens, but I definitely know you haven't seen Evil Dead 2. Ironically, we have Evil Dead 2, and at some point later on in the series, for our special Halloween episode, we're going to be talking about Army of Darkness, so stay tuned for that one. Spooky. So, the idea was a hit in the studio, and development began full-time in 1992. But, and this is the problem when you have egos in video games, lead designer Tom Hall started clashing heads with the rest of the studio. And it all began with the Doom Bible. Now, you know what the Doom Bible was?
It was, I don't know about the Doom one specifically, but it was like a list of things that, like the plot, how things are supposed to be.
Yeah, it was the design document, basically. What all video games should have, and all creative endeavors have. Like, for example, I'm holding this episode's quote-unquote design document in my hand, which is a pile of research that I did for this game, for this episode, for this game. So, the Doom Bible had everything that you would want in a document. It had plot, history, lore, design goals. The original plot of a sci-fi horror game where scientists on the moon open up a portal which aliens emerge. However, it's discovered that the aliens are in fact demons, with each level getting harder and darker.
I knew it was false advertisement.
Right, well, it's not too far off what the game ended up becoming, but it was far enough away from what the rest of the team wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, your lead designer and your lead programmer are basically the two main guys on a video game design team.
Yes.
Especially back then. They didn't have they didn't have a Todd Howard, for example. Right? So what you do is you follow their lead and you program the game that they want, and usually those two people are in sync with each other.
Yeah.
But Hall and Camerack were not in sync with each other, and they had drastically different visions for what they wanted to do, even though they'd already greenlit production on this new game.
Yeah.
So, what happened next? Lead artist Romero loved the idea, but Carmack not only hated the idea, but dismissed games having a story at all.
Sounds like a certain Japanese man.
Well, here's the thing. I personally think all good video games have a story.
Metal Gear.
Yeah. Because there's got to be a plot to what you're doing, otherwise you're just jumping over, you just platform it.
Without a story, the game doesn't have a soul.
Exactly. I mean, even Mario at its base has a story to it. Well, think about it.
I know, it's just, how many times she's gotten kidnapped?
She's never been kidnapped. She's gone willingly. Mario's an evil, jealous ex-boyfriend stalker.
Well, we're not going to go into conspiracy theories.
It's not conspiracy theories, that's conspiracy fact.
Okay.
No, right. But he actually said, and I'm sorry to say this, son, he said, story in a video game is like story in a movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. So basically, he wanted to remove the plumber coming to fix the sink element of the game. But he did insist, Carmack did insist he wanted the game to be a fast and continuous whirl. Hall disliked the idea, but Romero was for it. This caused Hall to rework the Bible into something that would fit the technology. So basically what this game was supposed to be was not just a game, but a showcase on the engine, the game engine, and showcase what the engine could do, what it could render, how it could perform with certain games and certain elements.
Yeah.
Now, do you think a game engine is as important as anything else?
Of course.
Okay.
Because without an engine, how's it going to run?
Do you think a lot of people are using the wrong engines in their games these days, and everybody should just use the
Unreal engine?
Unreal?
I mean, Unreal is the standard, but If you can get away with making a game in a certain engine, then you could use it.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of game development companies develop their own engine for two reasons. Okay. One, it gives them more control over the game that they want to play without limitations. The game they want to make. Excuse me, not the game they want to play. And two, if an engine plays a game so well, like Unreal, they can sell the engine or loan the engine, or lease the engine to, another developer.
Yeah.
For a certain amount of the profits of the game that's coming up.
Of course.
Now, that didn't work for Bethesda with Redfall, which is considered one of the worst games of all time.
Wah.
Yeah, they canceled the DLC and have refunded everybody who bought it.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
If you bought the DLC version of the game with the Game Pass or whatever it's called, they've refunded you your money.
DLC sucks.
No, they stopped making the DLC. They stopped work on it completely.
Oh, no, I'm talking about DLC in general. We could have a DLC discussion one of these days.
No, we can have that discussion now, in fact.
Oh,
I think DLC, traditional DLC, is a great concept.
It's a great concept, but is used very poorly. It's like you could make something a new experience, and that's fun, like a new campaign or new stuff. But if it's just for microtransactions,
that's a different topic altogether. Microtransactions and DLC are not mutually exclusive.
Well, I took statistics class, and I think they are.
Well, not necessarily, because here's the thing, right? Traditional DLC was an expansion pack to the game and expanded the game.
Yeah.
Certain game companies that rhyme with BA overtook the market and microtransactioned the crap out of all their games.
Well, I feel like you buy something to download to the game, so it technically does fit into DLC.
Well, yeah, but it's not. There's a difference in a microtransaction and a DLC, though.
I mean,
okay, I understand what you're saying, but in the technical term of things, a microtransaction is you get something in the game that you didn't need before, but you might need, and whatever. A DLC is as you said, a new campaign, a new story, a new...
Well, downloadable content in its form, like its basic skeletal form, is content that you can purchase to add on to an experience. So, like, it could be something big or something small.
Yeah, but when most people refer to DLC, they refer to expansion packs, not necessarily a new skin for $1. Or $2, or hey, you like this move, you can buy it for, you know what I mean? Those kind of microtransactions are not cool, and paid mods as well are not cool. I don't think.
EA, give me Mike Tyson, please. I paid for him.
Yeah, we bought a UFC 5 with Mike Tyson DLC, and we can't download it. They won't let us download it, and they won't give us our money back.
I don't want to make Tyke Myson again, man.
Tyke Myson, yes, he made a DLC character of Mike Tyson. It looked alright, fought alright, but it's whatever. So, in early 1993, the Doom Bible was rejected outright, as Romero wanted the game to be more brutal and faster compared to Wolfenstein, and did not need a character-driven plot this time for this game. Okay, so most of Hall's designs were dropped due to them being realistic and not entertaining. And they were also considered dull and uninspiring. So imagine you're the lead of a video game and being told that all your designs are crap.
I just quit.
Well, that's not too far off what happened. Later in July 1993, Hall was fired from ID Games, stating he was not in sync with what the team had wanted. So, they had 10 weeks before the game was scheduled to be released, and that's where 37-year-old Sandy Peterson was hired. There were misgivings about hiring Peterson because of his age and religious beliefs. So, he was basically a 37-year-old. I think he was Christian. I didn't catch his religion when I pulled him up. I don't think he was Jewish or Muslim, which are the three main ones. But his age was kind of a stumbling block for the company because they thought he was too old. Now, one of my YouTube guys who I go to for walkthroughs and strategies and stuff like that is in his mid-60s, and we don't want to talk about the great grandma Shirley either. Who's 85 now, I think. So 37-year-old game designer, not as uncommon these days as they were in the 90s.
He was a Christian.
He was a Christian. So he's working on a demon-based horror game.
To quote the Wikipedia article, it's not a valid source, but it's the quickest one. It says, I have no problem with the demons in the game. They're just cartoons, and anyway, they're the bad guys.
There you go.
You could see it like Doom as in a very Christian game. You kill demons.
Kill demons, yes. So Doom is doing the Lord's work. The team rushed to get that final production, and Romero and Peterson would design the levels, while Carmack would program them. Peterson and Romero had different styles, but they complemented each other, so they had a kind of symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Peterson's design were more technically interesting, while Romero's were more aesthetically pleasing. So, some levels were, good on the game, some were good on the eye.
Oh, yeah.
And they combined them both to make them as good on the eye as they were in the game.
That's what their vision was, but I'll step in and say they didn't really execute that very well.
Well, you gotta understand, though, 1993's graphics were not as...
Oh, no, I'm talking about the level design. Like, the level design in the latter part of the game basically amounts to 25-minute slogfest mazes.
Well, yeah, but that was part of the design of the game. That was part of the lab. Basically, you throw somebody into a labyrinth, you've got to do a maze. You know what I mean? And labyrinth levels were popular back in the early 90s.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
I mean, mazes. You've never been inside a maze. A maze is a test of. It was a test of will when you go inside a maze. So, you got to have your wits about you and everything like that. And if you have demons coming towards you, I think maze levels in FPS are perfectly fine.
If done right.
And I think the whole point of Doom was that they did everything as right as they were supposed to do it. And, the first level was the last level that was created. So the very, very first level was the last one.
I can kind of tell because it's very short.
Yeah. And they were crunched. Now, they didn't meet the third quarter deadline, but it was released in December 1993 online. The initial release was sent to the University of Wisconsin, and 10,000 people tried to download this thing on dial-up, which is a heck of a testament. Within hours, the game was banned on most networks. So, how they released the game was in episodic format. Now, you know what episodic format means?
It means that they released the game in parts.
Correct. Now, we would call that a new game or DLC content or whatever, but it was the same game before they put any patches on it. And they released about a year's worth of material before they ported it into other systems in around about 1995. In 1995, you had SNES, PlayStation. I don't think Genesis was doing more games, but I think I have a vivid...
32X and CD, I believe.
But I have vivid memory of playing cartridge Doom on Sega Genesis with the 3 buttons. I'm pretty sure I remember playing Doom on the Genesis.
I think it was the 32X because...
No, it couldn't have been because the person whose house I played it at wasn't didn't have the 32X expansion. Now, I could be wrong, and I probably am, but like I said, I have a vivid memory of playing Genesis Doom.
I'm looking right now. Hold on.
You can look. That's fine. It might have been the Saturn. I don't know. But
I'm looking and I'm not seeing anything besides the 32X.
Okay. So either they had 32X or I played it on something else and assumed it was the Genesis.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. That's cool. So we got 3 games to look at. And we're going to look at the 3 games that were released in the 90s without going to the N64 4th game that was released in the 90s, because that game kind of was the pits.
That one kind of sucked.
And it's not acknowledged by ID Software. It's not acknowledged. What I mean by not acknowledged is it's kind of like Crash Bandicoot 4.
Rat the Cortex?
Yeah, that's not acknowledged by Crash Bandicoot because they released Crash Bandicoot 4. Now, for those of you who are following, let me explain. They released Crash Bandicoot, Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, Crash Bandicoot 3... Warped. And then they released The Wrath of Cortex for the PS2, which was a dreadful game.
I thought it was okay.
It was not powerful enough. The PS2 did not have the power to play the game because the loading screens were a minute apiece.
Oh, gosh. Well, not on GameCube. It was actually pretty average load times.
But when they came up with a new Crash Bandicoot game, they called it Crash Bandicoot 4. So, even though it's the 5th game in the series. So, go figure.
Well,
anyway.
Technically, it's the 6th one.
There you go.
Because in Japan, they call it Crash 4 and Twinsanity Crash 5.
Okay, well, you learn something new every day. So, we start with Doom, the original game. Woo! And in the future, an unarmed Marine is posted to a dead-end assignment on Mars after assaulting a superior officer who ordered his unit to fire on civilians. The Union Aerospace Corporation, which operates radioactive waste facilities there, allows the military to conduct secret teleportation experiments that turn deadly. A base on Phobos, which is the moon of Mars, urgently requests military support, while Deimos disappears entirely, and the Marine joins a combat force to secure Phobos. He waits at the perimeter as ordered while the entire assault team is wiped out. With no way off the moon, and armed only with a pistol, he enters the base, intent on revenge.
Wow.
So it starts off like every other FPS game. You're armed with a pistol, and you wait.
Go shoot.
And you're armed with a pistol, about 100 bullets, and your wits. And that's all you got.
Yeah.
So, you control Doom Guy through a first-person shooter through a military base on the moons of Mars and in Hell. The finish of a level must through a labyrinth-style area to get to the exit while keeping away from the hordes of enemies. The player must manage his health and ammo supply. That's one thing I didn't like about this game, but I guess I'm spoiled by unlimited ammo carries for modern games. Because even in the remakes in the 2016 and Doom Eternal, you could only carry a certain amount of ammo before you maxed out.
I think that's a good thing, to be honest with you, because it makes it harder without making it bullcrap.
Well, here's something I've never understood, and I'll go back to Doom in just a second. Making a game hard does not equate making a game good.
Well, no, when I said it makes it harder, I mean it's like since the fact that you have limited ammo makes it, I guess you could say, artificially harder without having to make the level designs and enemies bullcrap.
It makes it strategically better.
Yeah.
Because you have to plan out your ammo use and all kind of stuff like that.
You just can't whip out the rocket launcher every 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And like I said, but just because a game's hard doesn't mean it's good.
No.
You know, it just means it's hard. You know, that's why I like games that have settings where you can change the difficulty level, you know? Because I play for fun, and if I'm not having fun, I'm not going to play the game. That's why Elden Ring didn't last too long in this house.
I was going to play it, then you deleted it. I was devastated.
Well, it wasn't just that. I bought it, I didn't like it, so I sent it back. Fair enough. And that happens. I mean, it's just... it was too hard, you should have gotten better. It wasn't just the fact that it was hard, it's the fact that it was... I like open world games, but this was too open. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't... Open world games, to me, is... I get overwhelmed, so I'm just like... I like things with clear objective.
Yeah, and Elden Ring doesn't have clear objectives. Elden Ring is just wander around until you stumble upon the things you need. I know it's more to it than that, but I mean...
It's kind of like Breath in the Wild, that's why I never got into it.
Yeah. There's no clear, concise quests.
Well, I mean, as long as you get the gist of it, maybe so, but that's...
Well, see, my ADD, I can't get the gist of it. I've got to be told what to do. Which is why I enjoy Bethesda games, because they tell you exactly what to do and how to do it. The challenge is doing what they tell you to do. You know?
A good example of you could tell people what to do without giving them the explicit way is Metroid Fusion, where the computer gives you the place you need to go to, but he doesn't tell you how to get there. That's for you to find out. That's a good balance.
That's a good balance. But aside from regular enemies, the environment played a part in the gameplay. You had puzzles that involved getting keycards to advance areas. Their environmental hazards include toxic pits and ceilings that fall and collapse and crush you, as just two examples. The game was made in two versions. You had single player and multiplayer. And I wish games would come back with multiplayer mode, because there were two kinds of multiplayer. There was cooperative mode, where you and a friend become Doom guys and try and take it out together. Or there was deathmatch mode, where, who kills the most enemies and each other.
Yeah.
So the original Battle Royale experience, I guess you could say.
Pretty much.
Which I don't like Battle Royale games. I really don't. But the game was rendered in 3D, and the sprites were rendered in 2D, so this gave it like a 2.5D effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the soundtrack of this game was heavy metal, which added to the franticness of the gameplay. That's something we don't talk about much about this game. The soundtrack, the music...
Classic.
Up there with Mario and Sonic classic stuff.
I'd say Castlevania and Mega Man are better.
Well, yeah, I said that, but I'm.
Yeah, iconic, I got you.
Nobody... Okay, my phone doesn't play the Castlevania theme.
It should. It's classic. You can't deny it.
So this basically led from fighting games to what we now know as first-person shooters. Now I know Wolfenstein was FPS before Doom, but this was the game that solidified the genre. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And every other game that was made that was first-person shooter after 1993 until about 2001 was considered a Doom clone.
Yeah, that is true.
So, what did you think of the original Doom? You played it.
I'd say it's good for a first-person shooter back in the 90s, but I would say that it's very dated.
You say it's dated?
Yes, because, now one little interesting fact is that every enemy is on the same plane as you, even if it doesn't look like it. So if an enemy is, like, way above you on a ledge, you can still shoot it and kill it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that even though the controls are pretty smooth and the enemy design is good for the time, I'd say that it gets pretty tedious after a while because it's the same objective.
Okay.
Get this to go to this. Get the keys to go. And I feel like at a certain point it gets repetitive, and that is something the first game definitely struggles with. I played about 2/3 of it, and I was just, yeah. But then I beat it one day, and it was okay, but it's very repetitive in my opinion.
Well, that was a feature, though, a lot of games in the 90s, is that the stuff did feed back on itself, you know? And I agree with you that it was repetitive. It's just the mazes were different, and the enemies grew stronger.
Yeah.
But that was a feature in 80s video games. 80s video games just got harder and harder until you couldn't play them no more.
To be fair, back in the 80s, the levels weren't 20 minutes long.
No, I know. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, you know, the game was ahead of its time, put it that way.
Yeah.
But now the time has passed, and with newer Dooms, with the remake and Doom Eternal, you have much better hardware and much more scope to do level design, and you weren't limited in how big a game could be.
Also, the levels had a different objective of it. Well, no, it was the same get to the end, but the level design was different.
Yeah. So it's just like Mario, except you're shooting people instead of jumping on people.
All right, Nintendo, make a game with Mario and guns. Do it. Sonic did it already.
There you go. Mario is Doom guy.
Sure.
I'm sure there is a port of Doom, the original Doom, out there where the sprites are changed to Mario, and you know the enemies are the Koopas and the Goombas, and
so when I googled something earlier, I pulled up Chex Quest. Chex Quest was a clone, a literal ripoff of Doom. Same gameplay, same idea.
Yeah.
It was literally just that game, but Chex. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you play as the Chex mascot, and everything's cartoony. And I'm just thinking about it. I'm just
not only did clones exist, but he's going to understand. Doom was one of the first video games to do what I call, was, for lack of a better term, to do mods.
That is true. So,
level design after level design, enemy design, and so on and so forth. It was very, very expensive. And we're going to get to that here when we talk about the third game. But let's talk about the second game real quick.
I did not play this one very much. I only played about 20 minutes of it.
Okay, well, this immediately follows the events in Doom. And after defeating the Spider Mastermind, the Marine finds a portal to Earth opened by demons. After returning to Earth, the Marine finds that it is also being invaded by demons, who've killed billions of people. The humans who survived the attack have developed a plan to build massive spaceships that will carry the remaining survivors into space. Unfortunately, Earth's only ground spaceport has been taken over by the demons, who place a barrier over it to prevent the ships from leaving. So your goal is to, wipe out the demons and get the ships in the sky in this game.
Yeah.
So, gameplay was similar, but instead of focusing on changes to the game design and stuff like that, they focused on advancing the hardware.
Yeah.
So pushing the hardware to the limit and making the game as appealing as possible.
Sometimes that's not a good thing.
Sometimes it's not a good thing, but the game takes place over 32 levels. Boss fights from the original Doom were now ordinary monsters.
That's actually kind of funny.
That is good. I mean, they did that in Streets of Rage in the last level. You had to fight all the end bosses throughout the last level again, which made it very, very tough, especially because you didn't have the cop car.
That kind of reminds me of Devil May Cry, where the first boss is like in the third game, the first boss was this Grim Reaper dude, and it was a proper boss fight. But then at the end of the game, he was just a random enemy.
Okay. Well, Doom 2, was a multiplayer game, just like Doom 1. I think it took it doesn't say here, but what it did is supported LAN functionality, so you can have LAN parties. Now that's something that modern day gaming doesn't have anymore. Is LAN parties?
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but it was more fun having all your friends around with the computers and stuff like that, as opposed to playing it over the internet.
Did you know that Mario Kart Double Dash from the Nintendo GameCube supported LAN play?
There you go.
Yeah, with 16 GameCubes, I believe.
Nice. Well, after the completion of Doom, ID Software began work on Doom 2 straight away, and the game was released 10 months after the original. The game was released like the first in a set of episodes rather than a brand new game, except when it got ported. This also gave the studio time to work on their brand new game, Quake. I didn't realize they did Quake.
You didn't know that?
No, I thought Quake was a different studio.
No.
Doom 2 was followed by an expansion pack, Master Levels of Doom 2 for 1995, consisting of over 21 commissioned levels and over 3,000 modded levels. That's a lot. So Doom 2 is considered the better of the first two Doom games?
I'd personally disagree. The reason why I stopped after 20 minutes, that first level, was dreadful.
Well, it was the same. It's the same game, essentially.
Pretty much. I mean, the first level was. It didn't leave a good first impression. It's probably not fair to write the whole game off, but maybe I'll just have to play it.
Maybe you do. It sold over 3 million copies and generated over 100 million in revenue, which is phenomenal for that time. For 1995, phenomenal.
That's pretty. That's still good for any game nowadays.
So in 2022, John Romero, creator of Doom, created a new level called One Humanity for the game to raise money for the Ukrainian Red Cross and the UN Central Emergency Response Fund following the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
I did not know that.
By March 2022, the new level had raised more than $29,000 for both charities. Wow. Which, considering the source material, that's a heck of a thing. Yeah. So we get on to Final Doom, okay?
Final
Doom is basically, for lack of a better term...
I've never heard of this or never played it.
Okay, so Final Doom, okay, is... it started off as kind of... There's two versions of the game, right? There's two campaigns in this game.
Yep.
So one is called TNT Evolution.
Boom.
And the other is called the Plutonia Experiment.
Ew.
So TNT was a group project that was basically a mod that ID got wind of, and they loved what they were working on, and they offered to buy the project from them.
Off topic, I call ID software id software.
Yeah, well, I call it ID. Could be id, I don't know. Anyway, so it was started by a group of fans whose project was bought out by ID, and that's kind of happened in recent years with Bethesda. They've kind of paid they've paid certain modders to create levels, and they've given early access to some of the modding community who was popular. Yeah. The project went through normally with some tweaking and editing and lost a couple of levels. But all in all, TNT Evolution went through without a hitch. Well, two of the contributors to TNT Evolution, Dario and Milo Caselli, were disappointed. So they started work on a new project called the Plutonia Experiment. ID Software liked what they were hearing and offered them unlimited access to the game engine to develop this and to be part of the team.
Welcome to the club.
The strange thing about this, the 25 levels that they created for the Plutonia Experiment were not edited.
What?
ID loved what they did so much.
Just kept them
that they squashed the bugs and sent it out there and put it on the disc. So, the game is not seen as fondly because of its identical gameplay to Doom 2. And a lot of people saw it as an expansion pack not worth the money because there were thousands of Doom levels online in the mid-90s.
You can't keep up.
I mean, not only can't keep up, would you, like you said earlier, would you pay for 15 apples and 15 bananas where you could get 100 apples and 100 bananas for totally free? You know?
Yeah.
All you had to do was wait for the level to download on your computer. Or if your friend had the copy of it, you could, put it on floppy disk. But Plutonium was designed for those who had played Doom 2 on hard mode and were up for a challenge. So it was the Elden Ring of the day, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But reviewers praised the level design, and the levels are huge in this game for both campaigns.
Oh, Lord.
But they're seen as perplexing and sometimes sadistic.
But I'm glad I haven't played this.
But the problem was in 1995, even though the game was technically better than Doom 2, in terms of development, in terms of level design, and so on and so forth, Doom was becoming passé at that time. It was considered an outdated game. I mean, you got to understand, they'd been slapping a new coat of paint over the same engine for 4 years at that point.
Sounds like something Call of Duty would know.
Sounds like, yeah, well, Activision, they have to do what they've got to do. But Call of Duty's always going to be around. But then again,
NBA 2K as well.
2K, FIFA, it's basically updating your roster every year, with a few bits tweaked in. They need to rebuild an engine every 10 years to make it relevant again.
I'd just say, stop making a new one every year, because the point, you're just releasing the same game over and over again.
Well, you got to update the rosters, otherwise nobody's going to buy it.
I mean, you could use a software update for that.
Yeah, but how are you going to make your money?
I mean, the games are hugely popular.
The amount of... Okay, let's use FIFA as an example, or Football Manager as an example. The amount of research that has to come in to update the player stats, update the rosters, update the teams, it's worth the price of a new game as opposed to just, a DLC.
Oh, fair enough.
Because, it's the way it's designed. So the way it's designed is it is a cash grab every year. We're going to give you new things. I don't like it, but at the same time, I understand it. I don't respect it, but I understand it. So, having played Doom, a little bit of Doom 2, played the 2016 release of Doom.
You played that?
You've played that. We've got it. We own it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You played it more than I did. And Doom Eternal that we've played, that when we had the Game Pass for about 3 weeks.
Oh no, I have Doom Eternal on Switch.
That's right, we played it on the Switch. So, what do you think video game history will remember Doom as?
I guess like Wolfenstein, a big influence on first-person shooters.
Okay.
And just what Doom has done for the video game industry. It revolutionized the genre and changed the video game world forever because of modding and downloading and all that.
Okay. The series is held in high regard of retro gamers and fans of original FPS. It has had a rebirth of sorts in the last 8 years, with the games being rebooted after ID Software's IP was bought by Bethesda. That's what gave us Doom in 2016 and Doom Eternal. They were critically acclaimed and hold positive ratings on various platforms that they came from.
Yeah.
So I think that,
they did a good job.
They did a good job. They kept the spirit of the game, and they expanded on, level design, which you can do in modern games.
Yeah.
Because as I said earlier, modern games don't have a limit of what you can, what you can do anymore. It's not forced to be under a gigabyte to make it work. So, yeah. The FPS genre is splintered into multiple different, gameplay modes. Like we've had battle royales and RPGs and stuff like that. And especially open world games.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's not an FPS, Red Dead Redemption is a third-person shooter, for lack of a better term. Yes, it's puzzles and story-based and blah, 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 but at the essence, how you deal with things is you get out your gun and you shoot the clan in the head. That's what you do.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw. The soundtrack raised the bar for music in video games. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Well, okay, before Doom came out, and we're going to wrap up with this point, before Doom came out, video game music complemented the levels. And when Doom came out, it enhanced the levels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I personally disagree.
Okay, why?
Because I feel like I don't think it's Doom wasn't the big thing that caused it, but games were already being atmospheric back then, like Super Metroid and...
Well, yeah, atmospheric, definitely, but when it came to enhancing the gameplay, the Doom music pumped you up.
Yeah, go shoot those demons.
Go shoot those demons with heavy metal music playing in the background.
Cockademons, that's what they were called.
Yeah.
No sweat.
So, Doom not only set the bar for what FPS should have been, it also set the bar for what video game music should be as well.
Yeah.
It raised the bar. So, that is it for Doom. I think we got a lot of good, interesting points in there. We went off on a few tangents, but that's typical. Kid, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about your experience playing the game.
Thank you.
It was fun to have you on. I'll have you on at another point at a certain time where
7 years after this episode.
7 years after this episode. Well, I might have you on next year.
Oh, okay.
And let me tell you why I might have you on next year.
Oh boy.
I'm planning.
Don't spoil your big secrets.
Well,
now.
it's not a secret. I mean, I say this all the time. I'm going to do an episode on a certain thing, but I'm planning on doing a Resident Evil episode at some point.
Oh, okay.
The original 1997 version.
Alright.
Yeah, there you go, see?
What about an episode of Metal Gear?
Maybe. What did Metal Gear come out?
1998. Metal Gear Solid came out in 98.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll look into it.
Alright.
Well, because when people think of games from the 90s,
people do
they think of mostly Genesis, SNES, 64,
PlayStation.
And PlayStation.
Well, Metal Gear came out on PlayStation.
But they usually think pre-1997.
I mean...
If I told you Fallout came out in 1998, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
You don't consider Fallout a 90s game. If I told you the first 2 episodes of The Elder Scrolls came out in 1994 and 1997 respectively,
Yeah.
I mean...
But people do consider Metal Gear a 90s series.
Well, only one of the games was released in the 90s. So actually, 2 games.
Metal Gear 2 and then Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Well, Metal Gear Solid's the big one.
Okay. Well, I'll look into doing that. Depends on what research I can get done.
I'll help with that.
There you go. All right. Well, he's going to be back in a little while. I'm going to be back here in a couple of minutes to tell you what's coming on for the rest of the season, because this is episode 1, and I've got some surprises and some things going on. We are this close to celebrating our 100th episode, so I'm looking forward to that. But it was good to have you on. Kid, thank you very much for helping. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
And, we'll see you here in a minute.
Woo! Subscribe.
My sincerest thank you to the kid for coming on this week. I really, really appreciate him taking the time out of his chores and his schoolwork and his extracurricular activities. He is a busy, busy kid, let me tell you. He is anonymous right now because I really don't want to amplify my underage kid. But, yeah, you will not be able to find him on social media through me. I will not be telling you. But if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at WelshJRC1984. So, there you go. Next week, we will be back with another episode. I'll be joined by the incomparable Sarah Connolly, and she and I are going to be talking about a movie that launched 2 people's movie careers, Michael Bay and Will Smith. We're talking about the 1995 classic, Bad Boys. So, hope you join us for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we get to talk about one of my favorite movies, one of the movies I still quote to this day, and yeah, so join us then next week. And that's really all I've got to say this week. It's been, it's good to be back. You guys are getting 2 seasons this year, so that's a lot of fun. I've almost finished my research on it, so that's good. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for what this season is going to bring. So if you like what you see, go check out becausemaybepodcast.com. That's where you find our archive, everything we've ever done, ever. If you were listening to this podcast on a podcast network that you don't usually listen to podcasts on, we are wherever you can find podcasts, especially on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, Pandora, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, or Amazon Music. Don't forget to check us out on social media. Go check out Because Maybe Network. And that's really it. So I'm going to jump off here, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of my Sunday. You enjoy the rest of your Sunday too, and I'll see you in a while. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.